So, as I suggested, we are getting um, a legal challenge on these Supreme Court appointments. This is just a follow-up to a lot of the things I had written previously. That's right, and in fact it's pretty open and shut. They're demonstrating absolutely no respect for the Constitution or for constitutional norms. If you want to increase ethnic diversity, you do it with the urban representation. The regional representation is there for a reason, to ensure that rural voices are not drowned out by urban ones. Now, this is an oversimplification. Um, is Aboriginal representation in Canada reduced just simply to ethnic diversity? It's not. This is a more complex issue. Nonetheless, most people are looking at it that way, right? That Aboriginal representation is just another kind of ethnic diversity, same thing as, black or Latino or Asian representation. But I mean, this is the argument you hear that this is a more important type of diversity in modern Canada. But the reality is that that's only the case if you live in the urban areas, right? Because there's no rural diversity there's no ethnic diversity in the rural areas. So to argue that ethnic diversity is more important than geographic diversity is the same thing as saying that urban voices are more important than rural voices, which is exactly what the constitutional norm is there to prevent. If you can find an Aboriginal voice in Atlantic Canada, then great. Chances are the Aboriginal voices that you're going to find are going to be in the more rural areas like British Columbia or Ontario. Sorry, in the more urban areas like British Columbia or Ontario. And because what you're looking for is an essentially urban concern, that makes sense. Meaning, what they should do is they should go ahead and they should appoint their Atlantic Canadian judge, and then the next time an urban seat comes up, which is not going to be very long, in fact, the Chief Justice is about to resign in the next couple of years. She will have to. It's mandatory. We have a mandatory retirement at the age of 75. Meaning the current Chief Justice, which is probably the biggest threat to our healthcare system, she's had some good rulings, but she's a bit too. She falls for a lot of market theory. She's a bit of a market nerd, and it's a bit of a problem sometimes, right? She'll be gone, no doubt, by the time this healthcare thing comes through. By the time a lot of the things that are coming through are going through, right? And while I think she's been a positive voice in a lot of ways, I'm kind of happy to see her and her ideology move out. And I do hope that the government replaces her with somebody that is a little bit more attached to the welfare state and the values, and is willing to look at data that upholds the superiority of the welfare state over the free market, right? Which, I mean, all data does, right? Market systems are the worst, right? So, I mean, by any empirical measure, markets fail at everything, right? I mean, even the things they're supposed to be good at, they fail at. It's a religion, right? Free markets is a religion. It's not data based. It's not empirical based. All data, all empiricism, all study rejects it. It's a religion. You have to accept markets on faith. And unfortunately, our Chief Justice is a member of that religion, and it'll be great when she's gone. Um, I'm not. I mean, I'm not arguing against an Aboriginal judge. I'm arguing that the Constitution has to be respected, and just because there's a pattern here, like this isn't the first time. It was the same thing with the Senate, right? Like this prime minister or the people advising him don't seem to really care about what the constitutional norms of the nation are. And this is important if for no other reason than to slap the prime minister on the wrist and tell him, hey, listen, you got to follow the rules. You're not above the law. There is a rule of law, and you got to deal with that. You can't just throw out all of these conventions and norms because you don't like them. And in this case specifically, what he's doing is, like, I'm not sure. I mean, okay, my argument is novel, right? I'm not pulling this out of hog or something, right? Like, this is novel, but at the same time, I think it's pretty clear, right? Um, there is some value in ethnic diversity, but not at the expense of geographic diversity. Now, of course, these same white liberals that are arguing in favor of ethnic diversity are not going to want to lose their own seats in Ontario and British Columbia, are they? Ah, they have no problem taking away seats from those backwards Atlantic Canadians, you know? Take away the seat from the Newfies, that's fine, right? It's a nexus of hypocrisy and broken thinking underlying this. One thing at a time, let's ensure that we maintain geographic, you know, representation. Now, it's not. The justice minister could still, could still do the right thing, right? I'm sure she's getting lots of. Well, it ultimately it's the prime minister, but if I understand correctly, it's that the panel recommends to the justice minister, and the justice minister recommends to the prime minister. I don't think he's going to budge. She could, with all the information and all the, advice she's getting, and you can't do this crowd, and I'm sure it's a loud chorus. At the end of the day, they could conclude that this isn't worth the fight, and they'll just, it's not over yet. But it's nice to see that this is happening, that people are standing up for the Constitution, and are not willing to sort of, roll over to the cult of political correctness.